Humanity is at a very weird point in time in 2026, and there are many reasons why this is. But on one hand, our lives have never been more comfortable and convenient than ever before, at least in documented history, especially here in the Western world. But on the other hand, we've never felt more disconnected. We've never felt more nihilistic, pessimistic, and ultimately unfulfilled with our lives. I truly believe that this is because psychologically, humans developed very differently from how we're living in modern times. You see, in the past, we lived in tribes and there was this big emphasis on culture and tradition and symbolism and rituals and stories and having shared values and shared religious or spiritual beliefs. Whereas nowadays, that's simply not the case. Modernity solved these physical problems with rationality and science, but doing so unintentionally created a lot of deeply rooted psychological issues that we're now facing. These are serious existential problems that even our ancestors from 3, 4, maybe 500 years back simply never had to experience. Now, don't get me wrong. Science is great. Rationality is great. I'm very fortunate, and you should be too, to be living in these times because life in the past was a lot more difficult than what it is in today's day and age. However, we've lost so much. And I think what we've lost is creating this major psychological crisis, you could say, across the entire Western world. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about exactly that, how this shift in humanity began, where we're at now, what we can do about it, and what's in store for the future. So let's get into it. As I said, in past times, our ancestors lived in tribes. They lived in villages. Maybe there were a few dozen people, maybe there were a few hundred people. Regardless, most people knew everybody within their sphere. And all those people within that village or that tribe or that culture, whatever you want to call it, they had similar values and beliefs and they followed the same stories and religious beliefs. And for better or for worse, this kept everything going in a cohesive manner. It kept everybody psychologically on a pretty similar wavelength. And of course, you could say that this meant people were more narrow-minded, that people were closed off to other influences that we now are very open to. You know, you can go online and you can learn about Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoist beliefs, and the list goes on and on and on of different religions and forms of, or schools of thought rather, around philosophy that simply wasn't accessible to people even 3 generations back. And yeah, on the surface, it seems great that we have access to all this knowledge, all these different insights and perspectives from all across the world. I love it. However, this is exactly what we have now. The internet provided all of this. And to me, this has created more disconnect between people, especially people within the same families, people within the same neighborhoods and cultures. We spend less time gathering with our friends and family in person. We spend less time listening to and telling stories of our cultural myths. We spend less time believing in something bigger than us because we're presented with so much information that we don't know what to believe. And along with this, it's getting more increasingly difficult to figure out what's true and what's not because of AI. There are some super hyper realistic videos of people and animals and different events happening, and it's like, was that AI? Was that true? You see these deepfakes of celebrities doing things, and then it turns out it really wasn't them. It was just AI. In fact, I've seen various studies all across the internet saying that most of the traffic online in 2025, and I'm guessing now in 2026, is driven by AI. So this means comments on posts, likes on posts, followers, all these things that you see, all the engagement, majority of it is driven by AI, not even real people. And since AI algorithms are essentially tailor-made to keep you hooked and provide you with information and more content that essentially validates what you already believe in, then this keeps you hooked. And as I mentioned, fewer people are believing in this higher purpose or this higher power. To them, their higher power is the algorithm. Obviously, I'm so grateful to have the internet, and you should be too. We have access to all this information, all these people, all these different ideas that we couldn't have ever developed before. However, as I mentioned, this is keeping us so disconnected. It's keeping us scatterbrained, and we really don't know what to believe in. We don't, in fact, have the mental energy or the attention span to define a clear set of values or beliefs that we want to attend to. But I'm proposing that, especially right now in 2026, we desperately need shared beliefs with other like-minded people. Joseph Campbell was an author back in the 20th century, and he talked a lot about stories and culture and myths. And his whole belief was that shared stories create this sort of psychological orientation within groups of people, within individuals even. And to him, stories were these moral frameworks. Stories were these psychological maps and these symbolic guides for personal growth and transformation. Without shared stories, without shared values and beliefs, then people would fall into emptiness. People would feel nihilistic and they wouldn't quite know what their true values or beliefs were. And he was right, because that's exactly what's happening today. And most of all, Joseph Campbell believed that when people had these shared stories and beliefs and myths within their culture, then they could connect to something higher than them. They could connect to the transcendent. Whether you're necessarily religious or not, there's no denying that there's way more to this physical reality than what we know of. This physical realm, this body, the things around us, it's only a fraction of truly what's happening. Humans can only perceive something like 0.001% of the visible light spectrum. So that goes to show there's so much happening around us that we can't even see, we can't even perceive. I think it's very important for all of us to be able to connect to something higher than us, whether that's belief systems, whether that's Christ, whether that's Buddha, Krishna, whatever. Totally up to you. I say this because life is chaotic. Life is uncertain. And the psychological weight of living in this reality, living as physical beings, living as souls in these physical beings, can really weigh down on your shoulders. And without some sort of story or religion or mythology that others also believe within your circle, then it's very easy to fall into this isolation, this disconnectedness, this feeling of spiritual disorientation. And even before Joseph Campbell, Nietzsche said, God is dead. And what he meant by this was that if society destroys its old belief systems, which he believed it did at that time when he wrote the book, it must replace them with something else that's just as meaningful. And I don't think we've done that. Think about it. In the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, the church was the dominant force. But then as science developed, as rationality took over, people lost faith in the church. And I'm not saying that the Catholic Church is right or wrong. You can believe in it or don't believe in it. I don't take one stance or the other. But what I'll say is that a society of people who have this collective shared belief in some higher power, and they have similar values, similar thoughts about given ideas, that's a more cohesive society, for better or for worse. Without shared beliefs and stories and mythology or cultural values that are held by just about everybody within that society, then nihilism takes over. And this feels super relevant nowadays because, like I mentioned earlier, humans are at a very weird point in history. We're more globally connected, or we can be more globally connected with technology, but ultimately we're more psychologically and spiritually disconnected. We're more physically disconnected as well. We've lost the belief in collective stories to live by. We've lost belief in the nuclear family. We've lost the belief in local communities. Shared moral systems are gone. Fewer people are religious. And yet, we still need meaning. Humans need meaning. This is deeply ingrained within us, spiritually, psychologically, physically. And as a result, we look for it in dangerous places like political extremism, like celebrity worship, like obsessive fandoms and obsessive trends we see online. And ultimately, this helps people feel like they're a part of something bigger than them. These means of trying to pursue meaning, these modern day paths that so many people are following, it's not getting us anywhere. If anything, it's leading to more moral decay, more psychological degeneracy, you could say. If you're still listening to the video at this point, then you know deep down within you that this is true. And maybe you can relate to falling into these traps. And you know that there's something that you really want to do about it because, well, this is your life. The question is, what can you do? I predict that moving forward into the future, technology will only get more immersive. People will only become more extreme. Things will only become more polarizing. And as a result, I think we're going to see two main groups of people. We're going to see the group of people where they totally immerse themselves into technology and consumerism and immediate gratification and extremism, and this will be what their entire life becomes. Think of the movie Wall-E. If you haven't ever watched that, I highly recommend it. Now, on the other side of that spectrum, I think we're going to have multiple subgroups of people who collectively come together to have shared values and stories and mythology and meaning. Those will be main pillars for everybody within these subgroups of those cultures. And maybe I'm being naive, maybe I'm being optimistic, but I do think that we're living in some sort of a psychological awakening. There's some kind of a revolution happening. And as the online world becomes more synthetic and disconnected, more people will look for that connectedness with like-minded individuals. Now, I hope that made sense. This is a rather new idea I've been tinkering around with, and I'm sure I'll refine it even further as time goes on, but I hope this resonates. My main point with this video here is just to explain that we lack meaning, and people desperately need meaning. Now, don't get me wrong, the stories and the culture and the myths of old times were not perfect. And on the other hand, technology isn't some evil force. AI isn't out to get you necessarily, at least in my belief. But what I'll say is that there's this major disconnect with people. We lack meaning, we lack purpose, and deep down, we need connection, we need meaning. We need to be around like-minded people. It's just a part of human nature. So, as this, I guess you could call it, spiritual warfare continues to take place, I think we're going to have a bunch of people wake up, you could say. We're going to have a bunch of people who decide, you know what? I want to be with like-minded people. I want to have shared values and beliefs and follow a certain mythology or religion that resonates deeply with me. And you're going to figure out whatever that is for you. Hope you enjoyed this. If you're still here, thank you for watching. I'll speak to you soon.